Europe's thin peace shatters in minutes. In London and Paris, telephones ring, promises to Poland hang by a thread. The first spark has been struck, and the fire is already racing toward the heart of Europe. Before dawn on September 1st, 1939, the Baltic lies still, too still. At 4:47 a.m., the German battleship Schleswig-Holstein turns its guns toward the Polish garrison at Westerplatte and fires. But how did the world stumble, with eyes wide open, into the war it swore would never happen again? The answer begins not on the Baltic in 1939, but in the ashes of 1918. The First World War had ended with promises that the next war would be impossible, that treaties, borders, and diplomacy would hold Europe together. Instead, those very treaties planted the seeds of the next disaster. The Treaty of Versailles restored Poland after more than a century of partitions, giving it independence and a narrow strip of coastline, the Polish Corridor, to the Baltic Sea. To Germans, it was an open wound. To the Soviet Union, humiliated by defeat in the Polish-Soviet War of 1920, it was a grudge that would not fade. For 2 decades, Poland lived between two predators. Its army was proud but under-equipped. Its alliances, particularly with Britain and France, looked strong on paper but weak in reality. Across the continent, the Great Depression deepened resentment and fueled the rise of extremist ideologies. In Berlin, Adolf Hitler turned grievance into a political weapon. Every success emboldened him, reoccupying the Rhineland in 1936, annexing Austria in 1938, and carving up Czechoslovakia with barely a protest from the West. Britain and France had chosen appeasement, convincing themselves that by giving Hitler reasonable concessions, they could avoid another catastrophe. By 1939, the next target was clear. Hitler demanded the return of Danzig and unrestricted access across the Polish corridor. Warsaw refused. To agree would be to sign its own death warrant. Then came the shock that stunned the world. On August 23rd, Nazi Germany and the Soviet Union signed the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact. Publicly, it promised non-aggression between the two bitter rivals. Secretly, it divided Eastern Europe into spheres of influence, with Poland marked for dismemberment. In Warsaw, tension turned to grim resolve. Mobilization orders went out. Soldiers drilled in city squares. Families filled cellars with food and water. Yet many still believed the West would act. Britain and France had pledged to defend Poland if attacked. Surely, they thought, that meant immediate help. But along the German border, the Wehrmacht was already in position. Orders had been written. Deception plans, like the fake Polish raid at Gleiwitz, were ready to go. All that remained was the signal. When it came, the world would realize that peace had been an illusion, and that the price for believing in it would be paid in blood. The Westerplatte Peninsula is small, a sliver of sand and trees guarding the mouth of Danzig's harbor. But, for Poland, it is a symbol. Behind its concrete walls, just over 200 soldiers of the Polish army guard a military transit depot. They know tensions are high, but no one expects the storm to arrive quite like this. At 4:47 a.m., September 1st, 1939, the German battleship Schleswig-Holstein, anchored nearby under the pretense of a courtesy visit, swings its turrets toward the depot. The first shells roar across the water, smashing into guard posts and barracks. Walls collapse inward, throwing men from their bunks into clouds of dust and splinters. Within minutes, German Marines and Danzig police auxiliaries rush ashore, confident that the fight will last minutes. Instead, machine gun fire erupts from hidden Polish positions. The attackers drop into the sand, stunned at the resistance. Mortars from within Westerplatte's defenses answer the ship's guns, their explosions echoing over the harbor. The Schleswig-Holstein pounds the depot again and again, but the garrison holds. Major Henryk Sucharski, calm under fire, directs the defense with Captain Franciszek Dąbrowski at his side. Their men dart between shattered buildings, trading ground inch by inch, but refusing to yield. By mid-morning, smoke rises in thick plumes over the harbor. German troops pull back to regroup, expecting the next assault to break the defenders. But the Poles dig in deeper. This was meant to be a swift victory. It will instead become a week-long stand, the first proof that the September campaign will not be won without a fight. Beyond the narrow strip of Westerplatte, across hundreds of miles of border, the same story is unfolding. Poland under attack from land, air, and sea, fighting a war that has begun before the world is ready to admit it. Berlin, late night, August 31st, 1939. The Reich Chancellery is lit like a fortress, its windows glowing over empty streets. Inside, Adolf Hitler sits at his desk, a map of Poland spread before him. Red arrows stab deep into Polish territory, tank thrusts from East Prussia, infantry sweeps from Silesia, airstrikes across the Vistula. The diplomatic stage has been set. Britain and France have been bluffed and tested. The Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact has secured Stalin's neutrality and promised him his share of the spoils. Goebbels' propaganda machine has primed the German public with tales of Polish atrocities against ethnic Germans. Now, the only missing piece is the moment. At 12:40 a.m., reports are, Iba from Gleiwitz, the false flag radio attack has gone perfectly. Dead Polish soldiers, in reality, murdered prisoners and stolen uniforms, have been left as evidence. The newsreels will show them as proof of German innocence. Hitler summons his senior commanders. Some, like Field Marshal von Brauchitsch, voice unease. Britain and France might act. Hitler's reply is cutting. Our enemies are worms. I saw them at Munich. His tone leaves no doubt. Hesitation will not be tolerated. At 12:50 a.m., Hitler signs Directive No. 1 for the conduct of the war. The attack on Poland will take place at first light, 1st September 1939. No further warning will be given. Across the border, the order spreads like a ripple. Panzer crews swing into their machines. Tank engines growl in the darkness. Infantry tighten the straps of their helmets. Luftwaffe pilots sit in cockpits, waiting for the signal to take off. In less than 4 hours, the map in Hitler's office will no longer be theory. It will be reality, written in fire. When the guns at Westerplatte open fire, the shock rolls across the harbor into the free city of Danzig. Streets that were quiet minutes before erupt in movement. Flags, shouts, boots. Danzig, carved out by the Treaty of Versailles and placed under League of Nations authority, has always been a fault line. Its German majority listens eagerly to Berlin's radio broadcasts. Its small Polish minority lives under a constant edge of suspicion. At dawn, Nazi paramilitaries pour into the streets. SA men in brown shirts, SS in black, many drawn from the city's own police. Their first targets are Polish institutions, the post office, the railway yard, warehouses. At the main Polish post office, 40 armed staff barricade the doors and refuse to surrender. German armored cars roll up. Loudspeakers promise safety if they yield. The defenders answer with gunfire. Civilians scatter. Some drag children indoors. Others slip into cellars. Shops slam their shutters. Trams grind to a halt in the middle of the tracks. From balconies, swastika flags unfurl. By noon, smoke curls above rooftops. The post office falls after hours of fighting. The surviving defenders are marched away under guard. The Senate of Danzig declares the city's reunion with the Reich. For the German-speaking crowds waving in the streets, it is a day of triumph. For Danzig's Poles, it is the first taste of occupation. Arrests, searches, the quiet knock on the door after dark. The fighting at Westerplatte can still be heard across the water, but here in the city, the outcome is already decided. Danzig has fallen, and with it, one more barrier between Poland and the war to come. The world will be told that Germany is defending itself. The truth is being staged in the dark. On the evening of August 31st, 1939, SS teams fan out along the German-Polish border. Their orders come directly from Heinrich Himmler, create the illusion of Polish aggression. Dozens of incidents are to be manufactured before dawn. The most infamous unfolds at the small radio station in Gleiwitz. SS operatives, dressed in stolen Polish uniforms, storm the building, overpower the staff, and broadcast a short message in Polish urging revolt against Germany. Outside, they leave behind evidence, corpses in Polish uniforms, still warm. In reality, they are prisoners from consent, ration camps, murdered for the role. The SS calls them Konserven, canned goods. Elsewhere along the border, similar scenes play out. Staged firefights, shots fired into empty buildings, minor explosions blamed on Polish saboteurs. German photographers arrive within minutes to capture the proof. By morning, Goebbels' propaganda machine is in motion. Newspapers carry headlines of Polish attacks. Radio announcers thunder about German blood spilled on German soil. The message is simple. Hitler has been forced to act. In reality, the invasion orders had been signed hours before the first fake shot was fired. The deception is not to trigger the war, it is to sell it. And when the guns speak at 4:47 a.m., the lie becomes part of the official history Berlin wants the world to believe. At dawn on September 1st, cables race west from Warsaw, Poland under attack. The reports are blunt. Naval bombardment at Westerplatte, air raids on cities, German armor crossing the frontier in force. In London, Prime Minister Neville Chamberlain summons his cabinet. The room is tense. Britain has pledged to defend Poland, but the pledge was meant as a deterrent, not an immediate summons to war. Some ministers demand instant action. Others insist on one last ultimatum to Berlin. The shadow of 1914 looms over every sentence. In Paris, Premier Édouard Daladier faces the same choice. French troops are mobilizing along the Maginot Line, but any strike into Germany will take days to organize, and if Britain hesitates, France risks standing alone. Diplomatic cables fly between the capitals. The British ambassador in Berlin delivers a formal demand. German forces must withdraw from Poland or face war. No reply comes. Instead, German radio continues to claim Poland is the aggressor, its provocations leaving Hitler no choice. By the evening of September 2nd, the streets of London and Paris are no calmer than the cabinet rooms. Crowds gather outside government buildings, shouting for action. Memories of Munich burn fresh. Another delay would be seen as betrayal. Yet the clock ticks on. Every hour of debate in the West is another hour for the Wehrmacht to push deeper into Poland. And in Warsaw, the question is no longer if help will come, but whether it will come in time to matter. The Germans have a word for it: Blitzkrieg, lightning war. It is not just speed, it is coordination, precision, and shock, all delivered at once. At dawn on September 1st, the doctrine comes alive. Panzer divisions spearhead the attack, striking in massed formations instead of being scattered along the line. The tanks themselves are not invincible, thin armor, modest guns, but they move as a single hammering fist. Behind them come motorized infantry, ready to widen any gap the tanks punch open. Above, the Luftwaffe turns the sky into a weapon. Stuka dive bombers howl downward with sirens screaming, the Jericho trumpets, designed to unnerve as much as to kill. They don't just hit troop positions, they hit bridges, rail yards, and crossroads, severing Poland's ability to move men and supplies. Radios link every moving part. Pilots and tank commanders speak in real time, redirecting strikes the moment a Polish counterattack forms. What once took hours to communicate now takes minutes, and those minutes are the difference between a retreat and annihilation. Polish units fight hard, but they are scattered. Cavalry brigades, still central to mobility, find themselves outflanked before they can reposition. The Polish Air Force, caught on the ground in the opening hours, can only launch isolated sorties. Within 48 hours, German spearheads are miles beyond the points they struck. Villages wake to find themselves in enemy lines without a single warning shot. This is not the slow grind of trench warfare. This is war moving faster than the defenders can comprehend. And every day the tempo climbs higher. While panzers tear into Poland's defenses, another offensive is already in full swing, one without tanks or bombs. Joseph Goebbels commands it from behind a desk in Berlin. By the time the first shells hit Westerplatte, German newspapers are already primed. Columns detail Polish atrocities against ethnic Germans, massacres, burnings, torture, stories manufactured in Goebbels' ministry. Photographs, some staged, others pulled from unrelated events, accompany the headlines. On the radio, the Gleiwitz incident is presented as ironclad proof that Poland struck first. Announcers speak with righteous outrage. The Reich, they insist, had no choice but to defend itself. In cinemas, newsreels show cheering crowds welcoming Wehrmacht troops, carefully cropped to omit the smoldering ruins behind them. Inside Germany, dissent is impossible. Editors who question the line are removed. Anyone openly doubting the cause risks prison, or worse. The goal is total unity, to make every German believe this war is both just and already won. In Poland, the propaganda battle is desperate. Government broadcasts urge the nation to stand firm and remind listeners that Britain and France have promised help. But as German columns roll deeper each day, the words feel further from reality. German aircraft drop leaflets over Polish lines, promising humane treatment to those who surrender, a hollow assurance. For many Polish soldiers, the only message that matters is the thunder in the distance, growing closer by the hour. Goebbels' victory is not in changing the facts, but in flooding the world with his version before the truth can catch up. On a German staff map, the Polish corridor is a narrow strip of land, but on the ground, it is Poland's lifeline to the Baltic and a wall between Germany and East Prussia. From the first day, it is a prime target. General Georg von Küchler's forces drive south from East Prussia. General Gunther von Kluge's troops push north from Pomerania. The plan is simple. Close the jaws before Poland can react. German armor slices through thin defenses, bypassing strong points to be dealt with later. The Luftwaffe turns the Vistula bridges into twisted steel, trapping Polish units on the wrong side. Motorized columns race down country roads, their engines drowning out the sound of fleeing civilians. By September 3rd, the two German thrusts are within sight of each other. Villages change hands in minutes. Polish troops suddenly find themselves surrounded, their escape routes gone before orders even arrive. Radios crackle with broken signals. Commanders issue retreat orders to units already cut off. When the lines finally meet, the corridor is gone. East Prussia is joined to the Reich for the first time since Versailles, and northern Poland is cut away from the rest of the country. For Germany, it is more than a cartographic victory. Supply lines shorten, reinforcements move freely, and the Polish north is isolated. For Poland, it is a deep wound in the body of the nation, one that will never heal in this campaign. By the war's first week, Polish field hospitals are drowning in casualties. The front is moving too fast for any stable line of care. Schoolhouses, churches, and railway stations are converted into makeshift wards, floors lined with the wounded. Doctors and nurses work in a haze of exhaustion. Many were civilians days ago. Now they amputate shattered limbs and stitch torn flesh under candlelight. Morphine is gone, bandages are boiled and reused, water is carried in buckets from bomb-cratered wells. The wounds are unlike the last war. Stuka bombs burn deep into flesh. Strafing leaves long, jagged bullet trails through bodies. Survivors arrive deafened, their skin blackened with soot, eyes clouded from dust and concussion. Ambulances can't keep up. Horse carts, trucks, even bicycles ferry the injured over roads clogged with refugees. The Luftwaffe often ignores the Red Cross painted on roofs and vehicles. More than once, a hospital is hit directly, killing patients on the operating table. Still, the medical staff refuses to abandon their posts. In Warsaw, medics operate in basements, their work punctuated by the thud of shells overhead. In the countryside, nurses set up under trees, treating men with one ear tuned to the sound of approaching engines. They know they cannot win the war, but they can save one more life before the front moves on. Modern war eats everything: fuel, ammunition, food, and the side that runs out first loses. For Poland, the supply chain is fragile from the start. Rail lines are its arteries, but the Luftwaffe strikes them relentlessly. Bridges vanish in fire and steel, trains lie twisted in bomb craters. Fuel meant for armored cars and trucks sits trapped in distant depots, unreachable. Some units halt not because of enemy fire, but because their fuel trucks have been destroyed. Food runs short just as fast. Grain silos in the west are seized by German troops. Farm harvests vanish into Wehrmacht supply columns. Army kitchens serve cold bread and tinned meat on the march, if they can serve anything at all. Civilians, cut off from regular shipments, face empty markets within days. The Germans, by contrast, move like a machine. Fuel convoys follow panzer columns. Repair crews travel with spare parts to keep tanks and aircraft in the fight. Captured Polish supplies are immediately repurposed for German use. By mid-September, the disparity is crippling. Polish artillery saves its last shells for critical moments. Riflemen count their remaining rounds. Commanders must choose which units eat that day, and which don't. It is not just the battlefield that is being conquered. It is Poland's ability to fight at all. By the second week of September, The map of Poland looks grim. German arrows drive deep toward Warsaw, and retreat is the order of the day. But west of the capital, one Polish general sees an opening. General Tadeusz Kościuszko commands the army Poznan, still relatively intact. Joined by remnants of the army Pomors under General Władysław Bortnowski, he notices a flaw. The German Eighth Army's flank is stretched thin as it pushes east. If he can strike there, he might disrupt the drive on Warsaw. At dawn on September 9th, Polish infantry cross the Bzura River under covering artillery fire. Cavalry charges follow, sabers flashing, lances lowered, hitting villages held by surprised German troops. The attack is fast, coordinated, and entirely unexpected. German lines buckle. For days, the Poles press forward, recapturing ground and forcing the enemy back. Berlin is rattled. Reinforcements are pulled from the push toward Warsaw to contain the threat. It is the largest Polish counteroffensive of the campaign, nearly 200,000 men in motion. But the Wehrmacht adapts quickly. The Luftwaffe bombs bridges, traps Polish forces between rivers, and strafes columns trying to regroup. Panzer divisions sweep around the flanks, closing the ring. By September 19th, the counterattack becomes a desperate fight for escape. Thousands are captured, thousands more are killed in the tightening noose. The battle is lost, but its delay buys Warsaw precious days to prepare for siege. For a brief moment, Poland proved it could hit back, and hit hard. By mid-September, Warsaw is surrounded on three sides. The capital, a city of over 1 million, braces for impact. At first, the bombardment is scattered, a few shells in the outskirts, testing defenses. Then, on September 10th, the Luftwaffe arrives in force. Wave after wave of bombers roar overhead, their payloads tearing apart apartment blocks, markets, and tram lines. The Saxon Palace, pride of the city center, collapses in smoke and rubble. Fires race through entire streets. Water mains are shattered, forcing civilians to queue at public pumps under the whistle of distant shells. Food grows scarce, bakeries run out of flour, and families boil thin soups from whatever they can scavenge. Mayor Stefan Starzyński becomes the city's voice. Through daily radio broadcasts, he urges Warsaw to resist and assures listeners that Allied help is coming. His words steady morale, but outside, the sound of artillery makes hope a fragile thing. German troops probe the defenses, but meet fierce resistance. Barricades rise overnight in narrow streets. Snipers harass patrols. Hospitals overflow, treating both soldiers and civilians in basements lit by lanterns. Every day of resistance comes at a cost, but the city refuses to fold. Warsaw's defenders know their fight may not save Poland, but they mean to prove that its heart will not surrender without a fight. By mid-September, Marshal Edward Śmigły-Rydz, commander-in-chief of the Polish armed forces, faces an impossible map. Arrows from the west, German, arrows from the east, Soviet troop concentrations reported but not yet moving, the capital nearly encircled. The choice is brutal. Defend Warsaw to the last, making the capital a symbol of defiance, or pull the main army south and east to the Romanian bridgehead, where terrain and Allied supply routes might keep the war alive. Holding Warsaw means glory and morale, but risks the annihilation of the army in a single trap. Retreat means preserving a fighting core, but abandoning the capital to its fate. In war councils, opinions split. Generals argue over maps under flickering lamps. Intelligence reports are already outdated by the time they arrive. German spearheads move faster than the ink can dry. Warsaw! Śmigły-Rydz leans toward the bridgehead plan. Orders begin to filter to frontline units. Disengage, break south, avoid decisive battles until new positions can be formed. Warsaw is told to hold as long as it can. Then, on September 17th, the message arrives that destroys the plan. Soviet forces have crossed the eastern border. The second invader has entered the war. The dilemma is no longer about strategy. It is about survival. From the first days of September, the eastern border is uneasy. Soviet troops mass in Belarus and Ukraine, officially defensive exercises. But Polish intelligence officers know better. Patrols report armored columns hidden in forests, railway yards stacked with tanks on flat cars, engineers building pontoon bridges over rivers that lead west. Moscow's public line is careful. Pravda prints stories about protecting Ukrainians and Belarusians in eastern Poland, hinting at intervention without admitting intent. Diplomatic cables stress neutrality, even sympathy for the Polish people, while the Red Army quietly maps Polish towns, rail lines, and supply depots. Inside Warsaw's intelligence service, reports pile up. Commanders know they can't afford to fight two mechanized giants at once, but with Germany smashing through the west, there are no reserves to FA. See East. On September 16th, the signs are unmistakable. Soviet border guards vanish from their posts. Forward positions go dark. The next morning, orders are issued in Moscow to move. The invasion will be justified as a rescue mission for eastern minorities, but the truth is older and colder. The secret pact with Berlin is about to be fulfilled. The Red Army is no longer just watching, it is ready to strike. On the morning of September 3rd, 2 days after Germany's assault on Poland, London goes silent at 11 a.m. The deadline for Hitler to withdraw his troops has passed. 15 minutes later, Prime Minister Neville Chamberlain's voice crackles over the BBC. I have to tell you now that no such undertaking has been received, and that consequently this country is at war with Germany. Across the Channel, France follows within hours. In Paris, Premier Édouard Daladier addresses the Chamber of Deputies. Applause greets the declaration, but the mood outside is heavy. The memory of 1914 is still raw. In Warsaw, church bells ring, crowds gather, cheering the news. Soldiers in the field pass it along in quick, hopeful whispers. The Allies are in the war. But the reality is sobering. The French army advances only a few kilometers into the Saar before halting. The RAF drops leaflets over German cities, not bombs. For the moment, the war in the West is a war of paper and words. In Berlin, Hitler is unmoved. He tells his generals the Allies will not act decisively. His orders remain the same: crush Poland before Britain, and France can shift from declarations to deeds. For Poland, the question is no longer whether help will come, but whether it will arrive before the country is gone. Before dawn on September 17th, a heavy mist clings to Poland's eastern border. Shapes emerge in the fog. First the silhouettes of tanks, then entire columns of armored vehicles, trucks, and troops. The Red Army has arrived. There is no declaration of war, no warning beyond the rumble underfoot. Official Soviet broadcasts call it a protective mission for Ukrainians and Belarusians in eastern Poland. In truth, it is the hidden clause of the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact made real. For Polish soldiers along the frontier, the shock is crushing. Many are already retreating from the German advance, hoping to regroup in the southeast. Now the escape route is gone. Some commanders order a fight, others, knowing the odds, tell their men to scatter. In border towns, Soviet tanks roll into marketplaces before dawn. Red Army soldiers tearing down Polish flags and replacing them with red banners. NKVD officers fan out immediately, arresting local officials, police, and anyone in uniform. Resistance is rare. Those who try are cut down swiftly. By day's end, the eastern sky glows with the dust of 1,000 moving vehicles. The second invader has struck, and the trap is closing. The Polish army is now fighting a war it cannot win, against two enemies at once. By late September, the fight for Poland is no longer about pushing front lines, it is about dividing the spoils. In Berlin and Moscow, the partition has already been inked. The secret Molotov-Ribbentrop map runs along the Narev, Vistula, and San rivers. West of it, Germany. East, the Soviet Union. Now the armies move to make those lines real. German forces hand over towns east of the agreed boundary to the Red Army. Soviet columns roll in with smiles and handshakes for the cameras, even as NKVD agents quietly mark names for arrest. In the German zone, Wehrmacht units give way to Gestapo and SS administrators. Occupation comes quick. In the West, Polish schools close, streets are renamed, and the Reich's laws replace Polish codes overnight. In the East, Soviet troops replace Polish signs with Cyrillic, seize estates, and begin deportations under the guise of resettlement. Families are split by rivers now turned into guarded frontiers. Refugees who try to cross to reunite with loved ones are often turned back, or vanish after interrogation. Bridges that once carried trade now bristle with checkpoints and armed sentries. On the maps in foreign ministries, Poland's borders are gone. On the ground, its people are learning what it means to live under two conquerors. By late September, Poland's roads are rivers of humanity. Families push carts piled with bedding and pots. Soldiers out of uniform walk beside farmers leading exhausted horses. Children ride on wagon loads of furniture that will never see home again. They move away from the sound of artillery, but the war moves faster. Villages they pass through at dawn are in flames by nightfall. Hunger and exhaustion set in quickly. Water is scarce. Streams are muddied by livestock in constant use. Illness spreads. Dysentery, fever, infected wounds left untreated. Makeshift aid stations spring up in barns and roadside ditches, staffed by doctors and nurses who carry on with whatever scraps of medicine remain. The danger is not only on the ground. The Luftwaffe and, after September 17th, Soviet aircraft often spot the columns from above. The scream of engines sends people scattering into ditches and hedgerows, clutching children, hoping the next burst of gunfire misses them. Some push south toward Romania, hoping to escape the closing trap. Others drift into forests, joining the first stirrings of partisan groups. Most simply keep walking, guided by rumors of safety that are already outdated by the time they reach their ears. For many, the road is not a path to safety, only a moving front line. When the Soviets seized eastern Poland, they took more than territory. Thousands of Polish officers, police, and civic leaders, the educated spine of the nation, were rounded up and sent to special camps at Kozelsk, Starobelsk, and Stashkov. At first, conditions seemed like internment, roll calls, meager rations, political lectures, but the prisoners didn't know their fate had already been decided in Moscow. In March 1940, the Soviet Politburo approved their execution. The reasoning was simple and ruthless. These men would never accept Soviet rule. In April, the killing began. From Kozelsk, prisoners were taken in trucks to the cotton forest near Smolensk. One by one, they were shot in the back of the head and buried in mass graves. Others met the same end in prisons and woods across Soviet territory. More than 20,000 were murdered in weeks. The graves lay hidden until 1943, when German forces uncovered them and broadcast the atrocity to the world. The Soviets denied it, blaming the Germans, a lie they maintained for decades. For Polish families, the truth came in whispers. A letter stopped arriving, a familiar face never returned. Kotzen became more than a place. It was a wound that never healed, a symbol of betrayal by one of the very powers that claimed to be a liberator. Its shadow would stretch over generations. By early October 1939, Poland is broken on the map, but not everywhere in the field. In the east, General Franciszek Kleeberg commands the independent operational group Policji, a force of scattered army remnants, cavalry, and volunteers who refuse to surrender. With German and Soviet forces closing in from all sides, Kleeberg chooses to fight on. On October 2nd, near the town of Koch, his men clash with the German 13th Motorized Infantry Division. The Poles strike hard, using forests and hills to outmaneuver the mechanized enemy. Cavalry charges surprise German positions. Infantry ambush supply lines. For 4 days, the battle sways back and forth. German reports note the stubbornness of the defenders, but the Poles are running out of ammunition, food, and medical supplies. By October 5th, encirclement is certain. Kleeberg orders a ceasefire, not in defeat but in recognition of reality. His men march into captivity in formation, heads high. German officers salute them, a rare gesture of respect in a brutal campaign. Koch is the final significant battle of the September campaign. It does not change the outcome, but it shows the world that Polish resistance did not collapse. It fought until the last cartridge, the last horse, the last order. 5 weeks. That is all it took for Poland to be erased from the map, again. The campaign began with the guns of the Schleswig-Holstein and ended with the surrender at Koch. In between came the Blitzkrieg's roar, the Soviet betrayal, the carved-up maps, and the endless columns of refugees under burning skies. More than 70,000 Polish soldiers were killed, over 130,000 wounded, and hundreds of thousands taken prisoner by Germany and the Soviet Union. Civilians paid an even higher price. Bombed cities, mass executions, deportations to camps and gulags. Britain and France declared war, but their help came in words, not armies. By the time the Western Front came alive in 1940, Poland had been dismantled. The guarantees of spring had become the bitter memory of autumn. And yet, Poland-Indies fight did not end. Tens of thousands escaped through Romania and Hungary, reaching France and Britain to fight again at Narvik, in the skies over England, at Monte Cassino, and on the beaches of Normandy. At home, the Polish underground grew into one of Europe's largest resistance movements, striking from the shadows for the next 6 years. The September campaign was more than the opening act of the Second World War. It was a warning, one the world ignored at its own cost. The speed of Blitzkrieg, the ruthlessness of modern totalitarianism, the dangers of appeasement, all were on full display in Poland before they spread across Europe. In the forests of Westerplatte, the ground still holds rusted cartridges. In the cotton earth, the bones of murdered officers still lie under the trees. Across Poland, memorials bear the names of towns that fought until there was nothing left to fight with. The invasion of Poland lit the fuse. The fire it started would burn through Warsaw, Rotterdam, London, Leningrad, Berlin, and Hiroshima. It began with a dawn too still, a silence too deep, and guns that shattered it forever. In that September morning's first hour, the world stepped over a threshold it could never cross back.